ship's hull. Another glance told me the ship's stern, with its bridges protruding, was fast approaching. The noises were getting louder, and knowing that the mast and rigging were about to come down, I rushed down below, hoping for some protection. With my hands over my head, I sat on my bunk as a whole new and far more terrible set of noises began. A few short seconds passed, but to me they felt like hours. The cabin next to me ripped apart as the chain plate behind the bulkhead splintered it into a million pieces. The boat heeled over to one side, then suddenly sprang upright with the loudest explosion yet, as the entangled rigging suddenly freed itself and crashed to the deck. When the boat steadied and the roar of the engine started to fade, I went back on deck. It was a mess. There was rigging, lines, and huge rusty flakes of paint and slithers of metal from the ship's hull everywhere. Beyond Ella's Pink Lady, I could see the dark outline of the huge ship's stern slipping away unaffected, leaving us at a stop in the foaming white slipstream. Shocked and disbelieving, my head still reeling, I desperately tried to come to grips with what had happened while checking the bilges for water and the hull for damage. All I could think was my poor boat. While flicking the switches to see what equipment still worked, it became a sort of chant. My poor boat, my poor, poor boat. I was numb and still shaking off the last remnants of sleep. Being scared hadn't crossed my mind. My only thoughts were for Ella's Pink Lady. Taking deep breaths to calm my shaking hands, I picked up the radio to call the ship and then grabbed the phone to tell Dad what had happened. I'm okay, I told him. I'm fine, perfectly okay, but we've been hit by a ship. We've been dismasted. I finished in a rush. Back on deck, alone and miles from land, it took me over 2 hours to slowly clear the deck, lash the broken rigging in place, and cut the tangled headsail away. I had to pause frequently to lean over the side and throw up as my earlier queasiness had turned into full-on seasickness. Finally, I turned on the engine to motor the 6 hours to the Gold Coast. How quickly everything had changed. Ahead of me lay at least 23,000 nautical miles of empty ocean, furious gales and the threat of multiple knockdowns. But on that day, I doubted that anything I was to face in my months alone at sea would be as difficult as holding my head high as I steered a crippled Ella's Pink Lady between the Gold Coast breakwaters and saw a crowd lining the river, a fleet of spectator boats and a scrum of waiting media. I didn't know if the crowd was there to show their support or to witness what many thought was my early defeat. I had to force myself to ignore the negative thoughts and concentrate only on guiding us up the river, throwing the occasional wave and half-hearted smile to nearby boats. I knew that in one horrifying incident, I'd given fuel to anyone who'd criticised me and my parents for what I was trying to do. In their eyes, I had proven exactly why I shouldn't ever be permitted to sail alone. However, in that same moment, I'd proven to myself that I had the ability to achieve my dream. Any doubts about whether I could cope mentally vanished. I realised my inner strength. In the coming months, when Ella's Pink Lady was thrown violently about by the wind and the waves, or when home felt a million miles away as we drifted becalmed, and the days ran into each other in slow motion, I was able to look back on that day after the collision with the 63,000-ton bulk carrier Silver Yang and draw strength from knowing I'd held myself together when all I'd really wanted to do was fall apart. As the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That tanker could have killed me, but it didn't. And in its wake, I was stronger, more determined, and ready for whatever came my way. Almost. Part 1. The starting point. Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Helen Keller. When I was young, I was pretty much afraid of everything. I'm not sure when that changed, but Mum tells me a story about a day at a family gathering when I was playing with my cousins and my elder sister. They were all holding hands and jumping into a swimming pool, and Mum was watching me closely because I was afraid of the water and couldn't swim. I was 5 years old. I obviously got sick of only watching the game, because as everyone lined up to hold hands for another leap, I joined in. Mum says she kept waiting for me to let go, but I didn't. I jumped with everyone else, shrieking and giggling until we hit the water. I sank to the bottom and my uncle rushed to pull me out. I wish I
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.